Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Connor never imagined that an ordinary Friday would become the turning point of his life. But that Thursday night, while watching some random thriller with Jade on the cozy living room couch, he already knew the real suspense was unfolding off-screen. Jade was curled up against him, her head resting on his shoulder, her fingers intertwined with his the way they always were. For years together had created an intimacy Connor believed was unshakable. He was a veterinarian who'd built a respected clinic in the community, and Jade, a successful marketing consultant, seemed like the perfect partner. They had plans, the bigger house they were saving up for, maybe kids in 2 years, that trip to New Zealand Jade had always dreamed about. When the credits started rolling on the screen, Jade stretched and said with that disarmingly casual tone that now sounded false to Connor's ears, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I'm going out with the work crew this Friday. Networking event, that boring thing, but I need to show up." She smiled, absently playing with the brown hair falling over her shoulders. Connor felt the familiar tightness in his chest, that weight he'd been carrying since Tuesday. But he smiled back, forcing lightness into his voice. "Okay, love. Go knock 'em dead." Jade kissed his cheek and headed to the bedroom, leaving Connor alone with his turbulent thoughts. 2 days earlier, on Tuesday morning, Connor was at his clinic examining a golden retriever when Marcus showed up unannounced. Marcus had been his best friend since college, the kind of solid friendship built over years of mutual trust. But that morning, Marcus wore an expression Connor had never seen before, deep discomfort, almost pain. "Dude, I need to talk to you. In private." Connor felt something inside him tighten. They went to the back office at the clinic, and Marcus closed the door with excessive care, as if he were about to detonate a bomb and wanted to contain the shrapnel. "Look, I didn't want it to be me telling you this, but..." Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket with slightly trembling hands. "I saw Jade yesterday. At the Riverside Bistro, that French place downtown." Connor frowned, confused. Jade had said she'd stayed late at the office on Monday. And? Marcus took a deep breath. "She was with a guy, Connor. Not work-related. I know the difference when something's not just professional." He turned the phone and showed him the photos. 3 images that shattered Connor's world in seconds. In the first photo, Jade sat at an intimate candlelit table, smiling in that special way Connor knew well, the reserved smile she saved for meaningful moments. In the second, she was laughing, head thrown back, while the man across from her leaned in close. And in the third, his hand rested over hers on the table, their fingers intertwined. Connor felt as if the air had been ripped from his lungs. "Who is he?" His voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. But I thought you needed to know." Connor spent the rest of that Tuesday on autopilot, seeing patients without really being present. When he got home that night, Jade was in the kitchen making a salad, humming some pop song. She kissed him like always, asked how his day went, told him about a tough client meeting. Connor watched every gesture, every word, searching for signs of guilt or hesitation. He found nothing. Jade was simply too good. Or maybe he'd just been too blind. That night, after Jade fell asleep, Connor took their laptop and opened her email. They'd always shared passwords. "Couples who trust each other don't keep secrets," Jade used to say. The irony was now as sharp as broken glass. Connor combed through her inbox, then the sent messages. At first, nothing. Then he spotted a folder labeled "Personal Projects" he'd never noticed before. He clicked. And found it. Dozens of emails exchanged with someone named Brendan Cole. The oldest messages dated back 4 months. Connor read the first one. "It was amazing meeting you at last week's event. I can't stop thinking about our conversation." Jade's reply, "Me too. When can we see each other again?" The messages quickly evolved from professional to personal, from personal to intimate. Connor felt nausea rising in his throat as he read declarations that should have belonged to him alone. "You make me feel alive again. Can't wait to see you on Friday." That afternoon at the hotel was perfect. Connor closed the laptop before he could read more. His hands were shaking. He thought about waking Jade right then, confronting her with the evidence, shouting out all the pain and rage that burned in his chest. But something stopped him. A rational voice in the back of his mind, maybe his years of scientific training in veterinary medicine, told him he needed more information. He had to understand the full scope of what was happening before taking action. On Wednesday morning, Connor called Marcus. "I need your help." Over the years, Marcus had become a private investigator, specializing in corporate cases but with experience in marital infidelity as well. "What do you need?" Connor swallowed hard. "I want to know everything about this guy. Who he is, where he lives, exactly how long he's been involved with my wife." Marcus asked no questions. "Give me 24 hours. Those 24 hours were the longest of Connor's life. He kept up his routine as if nothing were wrong. He woke up beside Jade, had coffee with her, chatted about trivialities. At the clinic, he performed surgery on a cat with an intestinal blockage, vaccinated 3 Labrador puppies, comforted an elderly woman whose poodle had arthritis. But his mind kept returning to the messages, the photos, and the question that haunted him: why? What had he done wrong? Or worse, was there something fundamentally broken in him that made Jade seek out another man? On Thursday afternoon, Marcus showed up at the clinic again. This time he carried a thick envelope. "I found everything." They locked themselves in the office, and Marcus began laying out the investigation results like it was a courtroom case. Brendan Cole, 37, a freelance photographer specializing in corporate events. Divorced 2 years ago, no kids, lived in a loft in the city's arts district. And more importantly, he and Jade had met at a marketing event he was photographing 4 months earlier. Marcus had managed to get recent photos, Jade entering Brendan's loft on 3 different occasions over the past 2 weeks, always in the middle of the afternoon when Connor was at the clinic. He also had credit card statements showing Jade had paid for dinners at expensive restaurants, gifts from a jewelry store, even a weekend reservation at a mountain resort Connor never knew existed. She said she went to visit her friend in another city that weekend, Connor murmured, his voice heavy with bitterness. "There's more," Marcus said, hesitating. "I spoke with some contacts. Brendan's got a reputation. He's got a pattern, married women, relationships that last a few months, then he moves on to the next." Connor felt anger replace the pain. So to him, she's just another conquest. Marcus placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "What are you going to do?" Connor thought. The emotional part of him wanted to go straight home, throw everything in Jade's face, and kick her out of his life immediately. But the rational side, the same that made him a good vet, knew impulsive action rarely led to the best outcomes. She said she's going out Friday night. A work thing, according to her. Marcus nodded, understanding. "You want me to follow her?" Connor shook his head. "No. I've got a better idea." That night, after the movie and Jade's casual announcement about Friday night plans, Connor waited until she fell asleep. Then he picked up his phone and made a call he never imagined he'd make. "Hello, Mr. Robert? It's Connor. Sorry to call so late. I know this is going to sound strange, but I really need to speak with you and Mrs. Robert tomorrow. It's about Jade. It's urgent." There was silence on the other end. Robert was Jade's father, a serious, hardworking man Connor had always respected. "Is she okay?" The concern was genuine. "She's physically fine. But I need to talk to you both. Please. Tomorrow night, at my place. I know it's Friday, but it's important." After a pause, Robert agreed. On Friday morning, Connor woke with Jade still sleeping beside him. He watched her face in the soft light filtering through the curtains. She looked so innocent, so peaceful. How many mornings had he woken up just like this, feeling lucky to have her? How many of those mornings had been lies? Jade opened her eyes and smiled when she saw him looking at her. "Good morning." She stretched, her body arching against the sheets. "You okay? You look tired." Connor forced a smile. "Just a busy week at the clinic. Nothing serious." The day dragged by with torturous slowness. Connor saw patients, but his mind was fixed on what was coming that night. At 5 p.m., he sent a text to Marcus, "All set for tonight?" The reply came quickly, "Confirmed. I've already spoken with her parents, they can make it around 8. I'll be nearby if you need anything." Connor took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. He got home at 6:30. Jade was already getting ready, wearing a dark blue dress Connor recognized. He'd given it to her for her birthday. The irony was cruel. "You look beautiful," he said, and it was true. Jade twirled, smiling. "Thanks, love. I probably won't be out too late. I'll likely be back around 11. Connor nodded. "Actually, how about we go out to dinner together tomorrow? Something special. I've got a surprise for you." Jade seemed genuinely happy. "I'd love that." "What kind of surprise?" He smiled mysteriously. "You'll find out." Jade left at 7:15. Connor watched her car disappear down the street, then grabbed his phone. He sent a message to Marcus, "She's gone." And another to Robert, "Please come at 8. Then he started preparing. He turned on the TV in the living room, connected his laptop, arranged the printed photos Marcus had provided into a folder on the coffee table. He brewed coffee and set out cups for 3 people. Everything needed to be ready. Robert and Diana, Jade's mother, arrived promptly at 8. Connor greeted them at the door, and they immediately sensed something was very wrong. Diana, an elegant woman with silver-streaked hair, clutched her purse tighter. "Connor, what's going on? Where's Jade?" Connor took a deep breath. "Please, sit down. I need to show you something. And I'm sorry in advance for what you're about to see." Over the next 20 minutes, Connor showed them everything. The photos of Jade and Brendan at the restaurant. The email screenshots. The images of her entering and leaving his loft. The bank statements showing expenses Connor never authorized, withdrawals from their joint account spent on gifts, fancy dinners, even a hotel reservation. Diana brought a hand to her mouth, tears silently streaming down her face. Robert grew increasingly red-faced, his jaw clenched in contained fury. "How long?" His voice came out hoarse. "For months, as far as I can tell." Connor's own voice started to break. "She's with him right now. Said it was a work event." Diana abruptly got up and hugged Connor, sobbing into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Robert stood, walked to the window, and stood there for a few seconds, taking deep breaths to control his anger. "What do you want from us, Connor?" The question was direct, practical. Connor gently stepped away from Diana and looked his father-in-law in the eye. "I want you to see what's been going on. I want you to understand who she's been when she's away from me. And," he hesitated, "I want you here when she comes home." Robert nodded slowly. "We'll stay." And they did. The hours dragged on. Diana cried intermittently, Robert remained in brooding silence, and Connor tried to hold on to calm that was quickly unraveling. At 10:30, he got a text from Marcus, "She just left his loft. Should be there in 20 minutes. Connor showed the message to Robert, who simply nodded. At 11:05, Connor heard Jade's car pull into the garage. The sound of her key in the door. Light footsteps in the hallway. And then Jade walked into the living room, still wearing the blue dress, her hair slightly disheveled, her lipstick smudged. She stopped abruptly at the sight of her parents sitting on the couch beside Connor. Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm in seconds. "Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? Did something happen?" Connor slowly stood up, grabbing the TV remote. "Something did, Jade. Sit down." His voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. Jade looked from one face to another, confusion turning to fear. "Connor, you're scaring me. What's going on?" He pressed a button, and the TV screen lit up, showing the first photo, Jade and Brendan at the Riverside Bistro, their hands intertwined on the table. Jade's face instantly went pale. "I want you to explain to me who this man is," Connor said, his voice still controlled but heavy with pain he could no longer fully hide. "And I want you to do it in front of your parents." Jade opened her mouth, closed it, tried to speak and couldn't. Tears began streaming down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "Connor, it's not what it looks like." The sentence died on her lips as Connor switched to the next image. And the next. And the next. "Not what it looks like?" Connor repeated, sarcasm now sharp in his voice. "Then explain what it looks like, Jade. Because to me it looks like you've been having an affair with a photographer named Brendan Cole for 4 months. It looks like you lied about where you were on at least a dozen occasions. It looks like you spent our money, the money we were saving for our house, on gifts and romantic dinners with another man." Each sentence was a verbal slap, and Jade shrank with each one. Diana stood up, her red-rimmed eyes fixed on her daughter. "Is it true? Did you do this to Connor?" Jade looked away, unable to meet her mother's gaze. "Mom, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." Robert cut in, his voice thundering through the room, "You didn't mean for it to happen? You had an affair for 4 months. That's not an accident, Jade. That's a choice. You chose to betray the man who loved you, who built a life with you." Connor continued, now showing email screenshots on the TV. "You make me feel alive again," he read aloud, each word poisoned by pain. "That afternoon at the hotel was perfect. Can't wait to be in your arms again." He paused, turning to Jade. "Didn't I make you feel alive, Jade? Was our marriage so dead that you had to look elsewhere?" Jade was sobbing now, her whole body trembling. "It wasn't about you. You're an amazing man, Connor. I got lost." "How convenient," Connor said, laughing without humor. "You chose to find that in another man's arms." Repeatedly. 4 months. He grabbed the folder from the table and threw the photos at her feet. "You got lost while lying to me every single day. Kissing my face and then going to meet him. Sleeping beside me while living a secret life." Jade collapsed to her knees, picking up the photos with shaking hands, as if only now realizing the magnitude of what she'd done. That's when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Connor checked the clock, 11:45. Who could it be at this hour? He walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the other side was the man from the photos, Brendan Cole. He looked shocked to see Connor there, clearly not expecting to find him. Sorry, I was looking for," his words trailed off when he saw Jade on the living room floor, her parents on the couch, the devastating atmosphere in the room. Something inside Connor snapped. All the calculated calm, all the control he'd held onto until that moment, evaporated. "You," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have the nerve to show up at my house?" Brendan took a step back, hands raised defensively. "Look, man, she told me you two were basically separated, that you only lived together out of convenience." Connor interrupted with a bitter laugh. "And you believed her? Didn't you notice she wore a wedding ring? That she always had these specific times to meet you?" Marcus appeared then on the porch, having waited discreetly in his car. He firmly gripped Connor's shoulder. Easy. It's not worth it. Brendan seized the distraction to speak, and what he said changed everything. She said she was pregnant. She said the baby was mine. Absolute silence fell over the room. Connor slowly turned to Jade, who had gone completely white. What did he just say? Jade shook her head frantically. He's lying. I never. I'm not pregnant. But Brendan kept going, anger now in his voice. You texted me yesterday saying you needed money to handle the situation. Said you didn't want him to find out. He pointed at Connor. I came here because you stopped replying to my messages today, and I was worried. But now I see you were playing me too. Diana sobbed loudly, her face buried in her hands. Robert stood and walked over to Jade, looking at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. Are you pregnant? Jade shook her head, tears streaming uncontrollably. No. I'm not. I lied to him. I wanted him to think we were something more serious than we were. The confession tumbled out, desperate and rushed. Brendan recoiled as if struck. You lied about a pregnancy? What kind of person does that to someone? Connor felt like he was floating outside his own body, watching this surreal scene unfold. His wife on the floor, crying and admitting lie after lie. His in-laws devastated on the couch. Her lover at the door, realizing he'd also been manipulated. And himself, at the center of it all, trying to process that his life had been a lie for the past 4 months, maybe longer. Get out of my house, he said to Brendan, his voice strangely hollow. Brendan didn't need to hear it twice. He shot one last look of disgust at Jade and walked away. Connor then turned to her. Get up. Jade obeyed, trembling, barely able to stand. You have 10 minutes to grab your essentials and leave. Tomorrow you can come back with your parents to get the rest, but I don't want to see you here tonight. Connor, please, Jade begged, reaching out to him. We can talk about this. I can explain. I can fix this. Please, just give me a chance. Connor stepped back, avoiding her touch. A chance? You had 4 months of chances. Every time you lied, every time you kissed me before going to meet him, every time you slept beside me pretending to love me, those were your chances. And you chose to waste every one of them. Diana approached her daughter, but not to comfort her. You're coming home with us tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk about what to do. Her voice was cold, distant, all maternal warmth gone. Robert was already grabbing his car keys. Jade looked from one to the other, realizing she'd lost not only her husband but also her parents' respect. She staggered upstairs, returning about 20 minutes later with a backpack and a small suitcase, grabbing only the essentials. At the door, she tried one last time. Connor, I'm so sorry. I really am. You didn't deserve this. Connor looked at her, and in his eyes there was no more anger, only deep exhaustion. You're right. I didn't deserve it. But it happened anyway. And now we both have to live with the consequences of your choices. Jade opened her mouth to respond, but Robert grabbed her arm. Let's go, Jade. You've done enough damage. And they left. When the door closed, Connor collapsed onto the couch, the adrenaline finally draining from his system. Marcus sat beside him, handing him a glass of whiskey Connor hadn't even seen him pour. Drink. You need it. Connor obeyed, the liquor burning his throat. What do I do now? Marcus sighed. Now you heal. One day at a time. The days that followed were a blur. Connor hired a divorce attorney on Monday. The evidence he and Marcus had gathered made the process surprisingly straightforward. Jade had no grounds to contest anything. She signed the papers without a fight, probably because she knew there was no defense left. Connor kept the house, most of their joint savings that hadn't already been spent, and his dignity. News of the divorce spread through the community. Connor learned that several people had suspected Jade's affair but hadn't said anything, not wanting to get involved. Some apologized. Connor just nodded, learning that people rarely want to deliver bad news. His veterinary clinic became his refuge. There, focused on healing sick animals, he could temporarily forget his own pain. Jade tried reaching out a few times in the first weeks. Text messages begging for forgiveness, calls Connor didn't answer, even a handwritten letter delivered by her parents. Connor read the letter once. It spoke of regret, of how selfish she'd been, of how she'd lost the best man in her life. She didn't mention Brendan, and Connor later learned from Marcus that the photographer had blocked Jade everywhere as soon as he realized how deeply she'd lied. Apparently, being manipulated didn't sit well with him. 6 months later, Connor was at the store buying food for his new puppy, a golden retriever he'd adopted from his own clinic and named Cooper. He was in the checkout line when he spotted Jade across the store. She looked different, thinner, her hair shorter, her shoulders slumped in a way he'd never seen before. She was alone, pushing an almost empty cart. For a moment, their eyes met across the aisles. Connor saw recognition in her eyes, then shame. Jade quickly looked away, as if simply seeing him caused physical pain. Connor felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction at seeing her apparently worse off. Just quiet indifference. He paid for his groceries and walked out without looking back. In the parking lot, as he loaded the bags into his car, his phone rang. It was Amanda, the new veterinarian he'd hired 2 months ago. They'd gone out to dinner a few times, easy conversations and genuine laughter. "Hey, are we still on for the movies tonight?" Her voice was cheerful, uncomplicated. Connor smiled, realizing it was a real smile. "Of course. I'll pick you up at 7. Perfect. See you." Connor put away his phone and looked up at the blue sky above. 6 months ago, he'd thought his life was over, that Jade's betrayal had destroyed his ability to trust, to love, to move forward. But here he was, with a puppy in the back seat, a pleasant evening ahead, and a future that, for the first time in months, seemed full of possibility. Inside the store, Jade watched through the window as Connor drove out of the parking lot. She'd been holding a tomato in her hand for far too long without really seeing it. In the past 6 months, she'd lost more than just her husband. She'd lost her job when rumors about the affair with the photographer reached her bosses, who decided it was best she pursue new opportunities. She'd lost friends who sided with Connor, who saw her as the story's villain. Her parents still spoke to her, but the disappointment in their eyes was constant and cutting. And Brendan, whom she thought might at least become something real after the divorce, had blocked her everywhere, calling her a manipulative liar. She'd tried therapy, tried understanding why she'd done what she did. Her therapist raised questions Jade had avoided for years, about why she always needed admiration from someone new, about the emptiness no amount of outside attention could fill. But in the end, Jade knew the simple truth: she'd had something valuable and threw it away on impulse, selfishness, and the illusion that the grass was greener on the other side. And now, watching Connor apparently doing well, maybe even happy, she understood that some choices have permanent consequences. There's no going back. No undoing it. Connor got home, let Cooper out into the backyard, and watched the puppy joyfully chase a ball. The house, which had felt so empty in the first months after Jade left, now felt filled in a different way. There were no more wedding photos on the walls. He'd put them away, not out of anger but out of a need to move forward. In their place were photos from the clinic, of patients he'd saved, of Cooper in silly poses, of recent moments with friends. He thought about that fateful Friday 6 months earlier. About how Jade's simple announcement that she was going out had been the catalyst for the destruction of a marriage already rotting from within. He wondered, not for the first time, if there were signs he'd missed. If there'd been a moment when he could have saved it all. But he always came to the same conclusion: no. Because saving something requires both people to want to save it. And Jade had made a different choice. Now, Connor had his own choices ahead. He could have shut down, never trusted anyone again, let Jade's betrayal define how he saw relationships for the rest of his life. Or he could do what he was doing, heal slowly, allow himself to meet new people, build something different from the rubble of what was destroyed. It wouldn't be easy. There would be moments of doubt, fear of being deceived again. But he was willing to try. Because in the end, Connor realized, the opposite of being betrayed isn't never trusting again. It's choosing to trust once more, knowing the risks, but refusing to let past pain poison the potential of the future. And as he got ready for his evening with Amanda, as Cooper barked happily in the yard, as the setting sun bathed his living room in golden light, Connor knew he was on the right path. It wasn't perfect. He wasn't fully healed. But he was alive, he was moving forward, and sometimes, that was more than enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.